Stand up. You're trespassing. Manager wants you out now.
I'm not trespassing. I checked in. Here's my federal ID. Verify it.
I'm not verifying anything. You don't get to argue. Move.
If you cuff me without cause, you're putting your hands on a U.S. District Court official on camera.
Officer Kyle Rader had patrolled the polished concourses of Chicago's O'Hare International Airport for 6 years when he made the decision that would implode his career and cost the city $6.5 million in a single morning. He was 32 years old, a man who carried himself with the swagger of someone who believed the badge granted him not just authority, but omniscience. On a bright Tuesday morning in October, amidst the hum of rolling suitcases and overhead announcements, he received a call from a lounge manager about a non-compliant trespasser in the exclusive Centurion Executive Lounge. The trespasser was Eleanor Vance, a 54-year-old Chief Deputy Clerk for the United States District Court, a woman who had sworn in federal judges and managed sealed indictments for 3 decades. What Rader did next, ignoring her federal identification, mocking her position, and parading her in handcuffs through a terminal packed with travelers, would become a definitive case study in how unchecked bias rots the core of law enforcement. Before we dive into the details of this catastrophic failure of judgment, tell us where you are watching from today. If you believe that experience and dignity should command respect, hit that subscribe button. We are dedicated to exposing the truth, and your support keeps us going. The Centurion Executive Lounge in Terminal 3 is a sanctuary of quiet privilege, separated from the chaotic bustle of the general concourse by frosted glass doors and a strictly enforced guest list. Inside, the air smells of espresso and expensive leather. The lighting is soft, designed to soothe the nerves of first-class travelers and high-status credit card holders. It was 10:15 a.m. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the tarmac, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. The lounge was moderately busy, populated by the usual morning crowd: corporate lawyers finalizing briefs, tech executives in hoodies worth more than suits, and politicians traveling back to D.C. In the far corner near the panoramic window sat Eleanor Vance. Eleanor was a woman who commanded a room simply by sitting in it. At 54, she possessed the kind of gravitas that only comes from decades of public service at the highest levels of the judiciary. She had served the federal court system for 30 years, rising from a junior docket clerk to the Chief Deputy Clerk, a position that placed her second in command of the administrative operations for the entire district. She managed a staff of 200, oversaw a budget of millions, and ensured the wheels of justice turned without friction. She was the definition of a public servant, meticulous, ethical, and fiercely intelligent. That morning, she was traveling to a judicial conference in Denver to speak on ethics in court administration. She wore a tailored navy suit, a silk scarf, and spectacles perched on her nose as she reviewed a stack of redacted case files. She sipped her tea, bothering no one, a portrait of professional competence. She had checked in at the front desk 40 minutes prior, scanning her boarding pass and membership card without issue. But the morning shift change had just occurred, and the new eyes watching the floor saw something different. Julian Thorne was 28 years old, the newly promoted lounge manager, and a man who viewed his role less as a hospitality provider and more as a gatekeeper of exclusivity. He wore his suit a little too tight and his authority a little too loosely. Julian was obsessed with maintaining the aesthetic of the lounge, a coded phrase he often used in staff meetings to describe keeping the clientele looking a certain way. He had been reprimanded twice in his previous role at a hotel for making guests feel unwelcome, but he had chalked those incidents up to misunderstandings. As he did his rounds at 10:25 a.m., his eyes landed on Eleanor Vance. In Julian's biased calculus, Eleanor did not fit the profile. She was a black woman sitting alone in the premium section surrounded by files, looking too comfortable. He didn't see a federal official. He saw an anomaly. He checked his tablet but didn't bother to scroll back through the check-in logs from the previous hour. He simply decided she hadn't been processed. He watched her for 5 minutes from behind the service counter. She must have slipped in behind a group, he thought. She's probably waiting for a layover and didn't want to pay for a meal. The fact that she was dressed impeccably didn't register. His bias filtered that out, focusing instead on her presence in a space he felt she hadn't earned. Instead of walking over to ask, "May I refresh your drink, ma'am?" or checking the computer system that would have shown her platinum status. Julian picked up the phone. He dialed the airport police non-emergency line. "This is Julian Thorne, manager at the Centurion. We have an unauthorized individual loitering in the lounge. She's refusing to leave." The dispatcher asked if he had asked her to leave. Julian lied. "Yes, she's being difficult. I need an officer to remove her. It's upsetting the other members." He hung up, feeling a smug sense of protection over his domain. Officer Kyle Rader received the dispatch at 10:32 a.m. The code was for a disturbance/trespass. Rader's disciplinary file was a thick stack of paper that the department had repeatedly shuffled but never addressed. He had 4 prior complaints for discourtesy, 2 for excessive force that were unfounded due to lack of video and a reputation among his peers for being a hothead who didn't like being questioned. He had a particular disdain for what he called civilians with attitude. When he heard the call loitering, refusing to leave his mind set the stage before he even arrived. He wasn't walking in to investigate. He was walking in to enforce. He parked his electric cart outside the lounge doors and strode in his hand resting near his belt, his eyes scanning the room for the threat. Julian Thorne pointed discreetly toward the window. Rader saw Eleanor. He didn't see a threat, but he saw a target. He marched across the plush carpet, his heavy boots thudding with unnecessary force. Eleanor was deep in a complex paragraph regarding sentencing guidelines when a shadow fell across her paperwork. She looked up to find Officer Rader looming over her, his stance wide, his expression hard. "Let's go," Rader said, his voice loud enough to turn heads 3 tables away. "Grab your bags. You're leaving." Eleanor took off her glasses, her brow furrowing in genuine confusion. "Excuse me, officer, is there an emergency?" Rader scoffed. "The only emergency is you trespassing in a private club. Manager wants you gone. I'm here to escort you out." Eleanor placed her glasses on the table, her movements deliberate and calm. "There must be a mistake. I am a member of this lounge. I'm waiting for the 11:45 flight to Denver. I checked in at the front desk." "Manager says you didn't," Rader snapped, cutting her off. "And I'm not here to debate membership policies with you. When I tell you to move, you move." The lounge had gone silent. A few people lowered their newspapers. Eleanor felt the heat of dozens of eyes on her. She had spent her life upholding the law, ensuring that procedures were followed, that rights were respected. She knew exactly what was happening, and she knew the danger of it. "Officer," she said, her voice steady but firm, the voice she used when correcting junior attorneys. "I am a Chief Deputy Clerk for the U.S. District Court. I am traveling on government business. I have every right to be here." Rader's face turned a shade of red. He stepped closer, invading her personal space. "I don't care if you're the Queen of England. This is private property. You are trespassing. Stand up, or I will help you up." "Do you think officers should be required to verify claims of residency or membership before initiating an arrest in non-violent situations? Drop your thoughts in the comments below." Eleanor knew she had to de-escalate, but she also knew she had to document. She reached slowly for her purse. "I am going to show you my identification. It is a federal credential." Rader's hand twitched. "Don't reach for anything." "I am slowly removing my ID," she narrated calmly for the benefit of the witnesses she hoped were watching. She pulled out a leather wallet and flipped it open. It displayed the gold seal of the United States Courts and her identification card, Eleanor Vance, Chief Deputy Clerk. She held it up. Rader barely glanced at it. "That looks like something you bought online," he sneered. "I've seen better fakes on teenagers." "It is a federal document. Eleanor said, her voice hardening. You can verify it by calling the district court marshal's office. I insist you do so. I'm not calling anyone, Rader said. You're stalling. You're under arrest for trespassing and failure to comply. A man at the next table, a white man in his 60s wearing a bespoke suit, stood up. Officer, look at her. She's obviously who she says she is. This is ridiculous. Rader spun on him. Sir, unless you want to join her in cuffs for obstruction, you will sit down and shut up. The man sat, but he pulled out his phone and started recording. Eleanor stood up slowly. I am complying under duress, she stated clearly. I am a federal officer of the court. You are making a grave error. Rader didn't listen. He grabbed her wrist, twisting it behind her back with a force that made her gasp. Stop resisting. Rader shouted for the benefit of the cameras, though Eleanor was standing perfectly still. He spun her around and clamped the handcuffs onto her wrists. The metal bit into her skin. Eleanor Vance, who had shaken hands with Supreme Court justices, who had dedicated her life to the dignity of the law, was now bent over a table in an airport lounge, handcuffed like a violent criminal. You are hurting me, she said quietly. These are too tight. They're not built for comfort, Rader retorted. He grabbed her by the upper arm and hauled her toward the exit. She left her coffee, her files, and her dignity at the table. As they passed the front desk, Julian Thorne watched with a smug smile, arms crossed. Have a nice day, he muttered as she was dragged past. The walk through the terminal was a nightmare. Rader didn't take the back corridors. He walked her right through the main concourse of Terminal 3. It was peak travel time. Hundreds of people stopped to watch. A black woman in a business suit handcuffed being marched by a white officer. The visual language was ancient and brutal. People pulled out phones. Flashes went off. Eleanor kept her head high, staring straight ahead, tears of humiliation stinging her eyes but never falling. She would not give him that satisfaction. She focused on the legal filing she would draft. 42, U.S. Code Section 1983. Deprivation of rights under color of law. False imprisonment. Assault. She built the case in her mind to keep from screaming. You're making a scene, Rader said, as if she were the one parading herself. You brought this on yourself. They arrived at the airport police substation 10 minutes later. Rader pushed her into a holding bench and began the booking paperwork. He was pumped full of adrenaline, convinced he had just taken down a defiant grifter. Name? He barked. Eleanor Vance, she said. Date of birth? She gave it. Occupation? Chief Deputy Clerk, United States District Court. Rader rolled his eyes and typed unemployed. The door to the substation opened, and the watch commander, Sergeant Miller, walked in. Miller was 55, a veteran who was counting the days to retirement and knew a mess when he smelled one. He looked at Eleanor, sitting with perfect posture despite the handcuffs, dressed in a suit that cost more than Rader's monthly salary. Then he looked at Rader. Rader, what do you have here? Trespasser at the Centurion. Rader said, not looking up. Refused to leave. Claimed she was some federal judge or something. Showed me a fake badge. Resisted arrest. Miller frowned. He walked over to Eleanor. He had been a cop long enough to know the difference between a hustle and the truth. Ma'am, he said respectfully, I'm Sergeant Miller. Do you have identification? Eleanor looked at him. It is in my purse, which Officer Rader threw on the floor over there. Inside, you will find my federal credentials and my cell phone. I would like you to call Chief Judge Richard Hallowell. His number is in my contacts. Miller's eyebrows shot up. He walked over to the purse, put on gloves, and opened it. He pulled out the leather case. He examined the badge. He held the ID up to the light to check the hologram. It was real. Undeniably, terrifiedly real. Miller felt a cold knot form in his stomach. He looked at the phone contacts. Chief Judge Hallowell personal. He didn't dial the judge. He dialed the court's general security line first to verify. The clerk on the other end confirmed Eleanor Vance's description and status immediately. "She's the chief deputy," the voice on the phone said. "She's supposed to be on a flight to Denver. Is she okay?" Miller hung up. The room suddenly felt very small and very cold. He turned to Rader. "Rader," Miller said, his voice dangerously low. "Unlock her, now." Rader looked up, confused. "Sarge, she—" "Shut your mouth and unlock her cuffs, right now." Rader froze. He saw the look on his supervisor's face, a mix of fury and fear. He walked over and undid the cuffs. Eleanor rubbed her wrists. Deep red welts had formed where the metal had dug in. She stood up and adjusted her jacket. She looked at Rader, then at Miller. "Sergeant," she said, her voice like ice. "Officer Rader refused to verify my credentials. He used excessive force. He profiled me. And he has just arrested a federal court official without cause." She paused. "I want his badge number and I want a copy of the Bodycam footage preserved immediately." Rader stood there, the blood draining from his face. The reality of what he had done was crashing down on him. He hadn't arrested a homeless person. He hadn't arrested a scammer. He had arrested a woman who had the power of the federal government behind her. I thought the ID was fake," Rader stammered. "You didn't think—" Eleanor corrected him. "You assumed, and your assumption just cost you your career." The aftermath was swift and absolute. The video of Eleanor being marched through the terminal hit social media before she was even released from the station. #AirportArrest trended nationally. By 2 p.m., the chief judge had issued a blistering statement condemning the lawless behavior of law enforcement. By 5 p.m., the mayor was on television apologizing. But apologies do not erase trauma. Eleanor Vance sued the city, the airport authority officer, Rader Julian Thorne, and the lounge's parent company. The lawsuit was a masterclass in civil litigation drafted by the best civil rights attorneys in the country, many of whom Eleanor had known for years. The evidence was overwhelming. Security footage showed Eleanor sitting peacefully. Bodycam footage showed Rader's immediate aggression and refusal to look at her ID. It showed the corporate lawyer trying to intervene. It showed Julian Thorne's smirk. The city settled for $6.5 million to avoid a trial that would have exposed years of systemic negligence in the police department. The lounge company settled for an undisclosed amount, likely in the millions. Officer Kyle Rader was fired 3 weeks later. The internal affairs investigation sustained 6 counts of misconduct. He was stripped of his certification, ensuring he would never work as a police officer again. At 32, he was unemployed and unhireable in security. Julian Thorne was fired the day after the incident for violating the company's discrimination and harassment policies. He attempted to sue for wrongful termination, but no lawyer would take his case. Eleanor Vance returned to work 2 weeks later. She walked into the courthouse with her head high, but those close to her said she was different. The quiet safety she had felt in the world was gone. She had been reminded that no matter her title, no matter her service to some men, she was just a suspect waiting to be caught. The money didn't fix that. The termination of Rader didn't fix that. This story forces us to ask uncomfortable questions. Why is a black woman in a luxury space automatically viewed as a trespasser? Why is a badge often a shield for bias rather than a symbol of protection? Eleanor Vance had the resources and the knowledge to fight back. But what about the people who don't? What about the nurse, the teacher, the student who doesn't have a chief judge on speed dial? If this system can attempt to crush a federal court clerk, what chance does the average citizen have? We need a world where dignity is the default, not something you have to prove while in handcuffs. Until we have that, we must keep watching, keep recording, and keep demanding better. Do you think Rader's punishment fits the crime, or should he face criminal charges for false imprisonment? And how should businesses like the lounge be held accountable for the bias of their managers? Let us know in the comments below. If you found this story important, please like and subscribe. It helps us bring these truths to light. Thank you for watching.